and talk about some of the important things that you learned from your dad being a jazz musician.
Wow. Well, again, just back to the seriousness and the dedication and the diligence. Stephen, I call him Stephen. He's my real father. I mean, he's my father.
I
My real
understand.
father. People think, oh, you call him Stephen, he's your stepdad or something. No, he's my dad. But I started calling him Stephen. For one, he liked me to call him Stephen, but then when we started working together, it just sounds better than being on the stage and being like dad. So it was just he practiced a lot, and he taught me how to practice, taught me how to, I think, somewhat efficiently practice. It's something we talk about all the time, and taught me about just everything, theory and history and the culture of the music, and how to be a jazz musician, which is certainly a lot more than just the music, but how to be a member of the community.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, we'll jump around a few years. We've jumped, you've gotten over the whole Moody thing. You graduated from high school and you decided to move all the way from out west to come to New York to purchase. Why such a long trip at that point?
Well, New York is really, historically and even now, it's where the jazz musicians are.
Yeah.
They're my heroes. I was reading all these books, reading about Monk and Bird and Hampton Hawes. Everybody's in New York, and I wanted to be in New York. And I was 17 when I graduated high school, and we came out here for auditions, and I decided to go to Purchase. And I was just so ready to, we were already working a lot in Oklahoma, and I was just ready to, you know, be a musician full time, focused completely, and just get started with what I thought of as, my real adult career, my life.
Mhm. Okay. Well, we'll jump into recordings now because we're moving toward the music and the 12 fine recordings that you released so far. We're going to talk also very importantly about the 13th, which is coming out this summer. But I'm going to tease that and just leave that out there to keep the audience, their attention wet a little bit for that one. But let's talk. Okay, I'm going to be selfish here. I'm going to talk about where I first discovered you about 10 years ago, when I had just started my radio station online, and I was getting music thrown to me from the different people that I knew back from when I was on the terrestrial air. And your album, The Breeze and I, crossed my desk, and I looked at it with the usual, okay, another female vocalist, okay, I'll listen. But there was something very, very different about you. Got to say from the beginning, yes, there it is, 2010's The Breeze and I believe that was your third album, correct?
Yes, it was.
Well, shame on me for missing the first two, but but I was just so impressed by your maturity as a vocalist and also as a pianist. And as we discussed previously, not only was I impressed by your vocals, but then you came out of nowhere with one of my favorite instrumentals, a terrific version of Land's End, the Harold Land tune associated, of course, with Clifford Brown. And let's talk a little bit about, first of all, let's talk about your recordings. What made you decide to go that route? Because a lot of times we'll have the vocalist will, even if they are a capable pianist, they'll go on another route, but you steadfastly stuck to being the pianist and the vocalist. And what made you decide to absolutely go in that direction? And what did influence in those days, at least, your song choices?
Well, so I just really love playing piano, and I really love singing. And on certain days I love maybe one more than the other, or I love, oh, today I feel like playing, today I feel like singing. But I can't separate them. And even now, I sometimes I'll play a gig where I only play piano, but I really don't like to just sing. Like it's been so long now that I've accompanied myself that I hear other people. I hear what the people are playing behind me, and I'm just like, I want to hear my own thing.
Mhm.
um, and so I was just really wanting to do that. Another thing that my father taught me, and that I think we both think is very important, is recording as an artist.
Mhm.
building a body of work, you know, and it gives you a nice thing to work towards when you're going to make a record. And so I made my first record at age 20, my first real record, like released and promoted record at age 20 in here in New York. It was with a big band. And then we made a second record with my trio, my working trio. The same trio as On the Breeze and I. But it was for a Japanese label, and so it wasn't domestically available. And I thought I wanted to, for one thing, this is gonna sound sort of like arrogant, but that was a really good trio, and I loved it. We were having so much fun. It was Fukushi Tainaka on drums and Neil Meyer
Yes.
on um, and a lot of people have heard and seen Neil because he has spent many years working with Jane Monheit.
Yes.
Back then, he hadn't quite started with her yet, so he was in New York a lot. We were working together a lot, and we were like, let's make a record. And Neil had just bought this four channel mixer. And he was like, well, I'll record the record. We only need 4 channels. We're just 3 people. And so this was a complete like DIY record. We recorded it in Michael Kanan's rehearsal space in Brooklyn. And Neil set up the mic. We had 4 mics, 1 on the voice, 1 on the piano, 1 on the drums, and 1 on the bass. And I produced it. You know, my family and I produced it, and we picked tunes that we were playing at the time from our gigs and that we liked. We wanted to feature. You know, for one thing, I don't like every song to be a vocal because I want some piano stuff on there, and I want to feature the bass on this, feature the drums on this, and now, you know, when we have horns, you know, feature the horn here. And so that record was like almost like a little perfect storm, the way it came together. And I had the ideas for the photos, I had the idea for the packaging, and then, I was young and I didn't have a lot of money, and I thought, well, I'll just promote it myself. I can do it, you know, and I wrote the one sheet, and I wrote the bios, and I had a new website that I had built myself. And I remember thinking, I loved that movie Legally Blonde with Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
And I was like, in Legally Blonde, she sends all her notes out on pink paper because she thinks it'll stand out. And I was like, I'm going to get pink paper from Kinko's. And all the they weren't EPKs, they were digital press kits. I mean, real press kits was all pink paper. And I sent everything out myself. And I worked that record for months. I didn't know what I was doing. I'd be like, oh, hi, like, I'm Champion. And I have a good record, and you should play it on your radio show, you know?
But it worked.
I met a lot of really nice people. You know, a lot of really nice DJs and a lot of really nice journalists who I think were just like maybe a little surprised, you know, they were like, who are you again? What?
Yeah.
Yeah, the pink paper. Oh yeah, okay.
Well, I feel left out because I never got pink paper somehow.
I didn't know what I was doing, so my list was, you know, poor. It was a poor list.
But the most important thing is I got the record. And so I began singing your praises to anyone who would listen. I'm going to skip a few years because I do want to get to hopefully have you play something for us in a minute. But I'm going to skip a few years and talk about your influences. And with your album After Dark, it became quite obvious that one of your influences was Dinah Washington. And how has the Divine Miss D, how did she influence you as a vocalist?
I just love Dinah Washington. You know, she's been my favorite singer since I was a little girl. It's funny. My parents loved Dinah, but, you know, they introduced me to everyone. I mean, I listened to Billie Holiday, I listened to Ella, I listened to Sarah Vaughan, you know, Chris Connor, Anita O'Day, Joe Williams. I loved Joe Williams.
Oh, yeah.
But I fell in love with this record, Dinah Washington for Those in Love, which was originally on MRC and then Mercury, and it's kind of like a blue cover.
Arranged by Quincy Jones, yes.
Yes, exactly. And it's a great band. Wynton Kelly and Clark's on there. And I got this on CD. And I was just, you know, old enough or young enough, depending, that when compact discs came out, it was like a big deal. So, like, I got this on CD. Like, wow. But I only had a Discman, so I had to, like, tape it to cassette and then play it in my Discman. But I just loved her voice. I felt like it spoke to me. You know, she has a big voice, and
Yes.
she's very authoritative, and she's kind of sassy, and I was like, that's me, you know. And I'm like 6 years old, and I'm like, yeah. And I memorized that whole record because I listened to it so much. And Clark really thought that was funny because I could sing all the solos and all the intros. And then I would listen to her blueses, and some of them are blue. You know, they're dirty.
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't know that. So
Yes.
I'd be singing, you know, Long John the Dentist.
Oh God.
And my mother would be like, no, don't sing that song. And I thought, you know, I was like, why? I don't understand. And I think I tried to sing it for like Joe Williams or something. Everyone was just like, oh my God, you know. But I just loved Dinah. I still do. She sort of speaks to me in a way that not everyone does, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Well, what I'd love to do now, Champion, if you feel up to it, I'd love for you to share a couple of selections with us, whatever you'd like. We're not Dinah or anything else. And by the way, and we'll get to this a little bit later, folks, you see in front of Champion on top of her piano, those are her two latest albums, which are absolutely outstanding. Yes, there it is, where she's showing you the stylings of Champion. Came out a couple of years back and happened to be on my best of list for that year. I'll just let everybody know. And also a more recent one she's done with the terrific alto saxophonist Corey Weeds. So we feature on that one Champion's piano and vocals, and Corey Weeds on the alto sax. And the name of that one is Dream a Little. It took me a second. Yes, Dream a Little. So both of those are available. But I'll stop talking and let Champian Fulton play.
Thanks. So I'm going to play one of my favorite songs. I actually recorded this on my first record as a duo with the great bass player Dennis Irwin, which was one of his last records. And this is You Turned the Tables on Me. I tables on me.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Champion Fulton, everyone. Can I get greedy and ask for one more, perhaps?
Absolutely, yeah. And I want to say to you guys that
Please.
I really wished I had gotten the piano tuned right before the lockdown began. Now I can't get anybody to come do it, and she needs it, I know. Maybe. I'm forever blowing bubbles, bubbles in the air. They fly so high, nearly reach the sky. Then, like my dreams, they fade and die. Fortune's always hiding. I've looked everywhere. I'm forever blowing bubbles, pretty bubbles everywhere. I'm forever blowing bubbles, bubbles everywhere. They fly so high, nearly reach the sky. Then, like my dreams, they fade and die. Fortune's always hiding. I've looked everywhere. I'm forever blowing bubbles, pretty bubbles everywhere. I'm forever blowing bubbles, bubbles everywhere. They fly so high, nearly reach the sky. Then, like my dreams, they fade and die. Fortune's always hiding. I've looked everywhere. I'm forever blowing bubbles, pretty bubbles everywhere.
Outstanding. Thank you, Champion Fulton. My goodness. Wow. So a couple of ladies and gentlemen who are watching, just to let you know, we're going to give you an opportunity in just a few minutes to ask questions. We'll turn it over to you and let you ask a few questions of the marvelous Miss Fulton. But there's a couple of things I'm going to ask before I let y'all, talk. So we're going to talk a little bit more. First thing we want to talk about is first, another one of your albums I do want to mention, Speechless, because that was very interesting. And you might have guessed, everyone listening or watching, that that was an album in which we had Champion playing with a trio, no vocals on that one. What made you decide at that point? That was on Positone, as I remember. What made you decide at that point? You were very established as a vocalist, and with a few instrumentals. What made you decide to do an all-instrumental album, which was a fine album, by the way?
Well, I love being a piano player, and I think the idea of doing a piano trio record, and especially this one is with a lot of my own compositions, it's sort of like a rite of passage for a lot of piano players. And I had thought of the idea for a long time. I was a little bit afraid of scaring people off because, you know, when people come to see me or when they get one of my records, they expect to hear both things, singing and playing. But Mark Free, who owns Positone,
Mhm.
he was really into this idea, and we talked about it for, I don't know, a year or maybe more. And finally, it was after dark, after, literally after dark.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, okay, you know, we have a nice collection built now that I can do kind of a specialty project, and I don't think it'll freak people out.
Mhm.
And so we decided to do Speechless. This is the cover of Speechless.
Yes.
And I wrote the tunes, almost all of them. There's one standard, Somebody Stole My Gal, which I arranged.
Mhm.
And it was really fun to have something different, you know, different to work on. Yeah, there it is. That's Speechless.
Mhm.
Something different, and I was so surprised by the reaction, you know, from both my listeners and also from the media. It had quite a lot of nice reviews. I was happy.
Well, it was true. It's an excellent record, and well, I've known Mark for a long time, and that is true. Mark Free loves to do things different. He doesn't. He loves to go outside of the box, do things that you wouldn't expect from people who perform or who record for Positone, and that's one of the things I love about him. But one of the most intriguing, it was a fine composition of yours, and I played it a lot because the title caught my eye. That's Not Your Donut, I believe, or something.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's the name of it.
Yes.
It's kind of it's a blues.
Mm.
It's a blues. It's kind of a little bit like an Oscar Pettiford kind of line, I think. And I wrote that tune, and we needed a title, and we were playing a private party,
Mhm.
friends of mine, and it was in a hotel, and there was other parties happening, you know. And my band, who's on the record, Ben and Adi, we were out, you
Mhm.
know, like on break, and there was some catering, and Adi started to like eat a donut, and a woman from the hotel just like appeared out of nowhere, and she was like, "That's not your donut. That's not your donut. That's Alden Sachs's donut."
Oh, okay.
And we were like, "Oh, you know, okay, sorry." But and then it was just such a funny story to us, and I thought, well, we're just gonna call the blues that.
Well, I figured that had to be there had to be a personal story behind it. So it just came up. I said, let me just ask about that. Let's talk about now during the lockdown, during this period of time where everything's a little bit different for everybody. Of course, obviously for you as a working musician. But one thing that you've done that I've found quite fascinating and has become appointment listening for me on Sunday afternoons is your live from lockdown that you do every Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern. Can you tell everybody a little bit about that?
Well, I really, you know, one of my favorite things about being a musician and playing gigs, I love to travel and I love to work. And my favorite part of it is the people, you know, getting to hang out and talk and, you know, the community. And when the lockdowns, you know, began, which was like mid-March, I was really, you know, I think all of us were so, you know, oh, this is like disappointing. And I had a lot of, I was supposed to go to Europe, that was all canceled, oh, everything's canceled. And I thought, well, I can just go on Facebook Live and maybe it'll be fun. You know, maybe I'll see some of you know, what people will talk to me
Yeah.
and give me a sense of community. And so we did one, and it was such really like a hit. And I thought, oh, we should just do this all the time. And Sunday seemed to be a good day, and it just sort of became a thing. And it's even funny, like I call it Live from Lockdown, but I didn't put any thought into that. I just said it one day on the show, and I was like, oh, you know, Live from Lockdown. And then I thought, that's not a bad title, actually.
It's a good title. Yeah, it's got a nice ring to it.
And it's just been fun for me to do it. We're live every day, every Sunday on Facebook and YouTube at 5 p.m. Eastern, and it's just been wonderful to see people, and I've met a lot of new people, and just a way to sort of keep things going under this different time.
Absolutely. Speaking of things coming, now we've got that coming, and let's talk about the fact you've got 12 albums, and there's about to be a 13th. and I find everything about it very interesting. Now, I understand, and I'll let you tell everyone about it, but I understand it's a tribute to Charlie Parker. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. So it's my lucky 13th record.
Yes.
I feel like, well, it's really a year for the number 13 to come out, but it is. So this is 2020. Of course, Charlie Parker was born in 1920.
1920,
So
yes.
And I have a very close personal relationship with the music of Charlie Parker. I'll tell you really quickly that
Sure.
I was born. Um, my parents and my father, I guess specifically, had this idea that he wanted me to only to hear the most beautiful things, the most beautiful music, and the best, as my introduction to the world. And he chose Bird with Strings for that.
Oh,
so
yes.
When I was a baby, that was the only music I heard for a while. Like every time when I was in the hospital and then when I came home, they would just play Bird with Strings over and over again. And so I really feel close to that record, and I love his music, and I thought I wanted to do something special for him for this year. And I had this idea to do a record with some of his tunes, some of his compositions, but also songs that he's sort of famous for playing, and a lot of the songs from Bird with Strings. And we were thinking, I have a good friend, Scott Hamilton, the great
Yes.
singer. We've recorded together once before. We wanted to do it again. And he also, Scott and I are very similar. We love a lot of the same records. We love Charlie Parker, and I thought, oh, maybe this is something we would like to do together. And so it's my regular band, which is Fuku on drums and Hiei on bass, Steven on flugelhorn, plus Scott. And we feature Scott quite a bit, and it's really nice. I'm happy with it.
Okay, can't wait to hear it now. When is it coming out? Just to make sure everybody can mark that date on their calendars. When can we expect to see it?
It's going to be available online on August 28th, which I know seems like a long way away. But most likely in August, I will start celebrating it on my Sunday shows and on my social medias. And I'm going to start, sharing some information about it. The cover's really cool. I can't wait for you guys to see it.
Cool.
So that's going to be out at the end of August. Oh, and it's coming out on August 28th because Bird's actual birthday is August 29th.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of his weekend.
Okay. And I'm going to ask another one. You'll probably say, how did you know this? But just asking, is this true or not, since we're on the subject of Bird? Heard somewhere when we were talking about you in kindergarten earlier, that where others would be bringing Madonna records during kindergarten, you would bring Charlie Parker records during show and tell. Is that correct?
Yes, I brought Charlie Parker. I remember bringing Louis Armstrong records. I always wanted the whole world to hear this music because it's so beautiful. And I just think, those two people especially, I mentioned Louis Armstrong and Charlie Parker, there's something, when you put on one of their records, it's a different feeling. I mean, I'll be listening, I listen in the car, and Dexter Gordon's playing, I love Sonny Stitt's playing, all this stuff, and then a Bird record will come out and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's like when you listen to all this great stuff, and then you put on Art Tatum and you're just like, wow,
Yeah.
So
that's right. As Pat said, God is in the house with Art Tatum. Very much so. Now, before we open up for questions, we're going to make sure everybody knows the best place that they can get a hold of any of your dozen available recordings. And we know, of course, about iTunes and all the other reputable places, because as I tell everybody, and this is something I tell people all the time, if you dig it, buy it, okay? Don't stream it. I know there's streaming services out there. No, especially now, if you love the music, support the artist and buy it. But where's the best place they can go to purchase your music, Champion?
Everything is actually available on my website.
Mm-hmm.
There's a store on there. You can pay with PayPal, credit cards, all kinds of things, and it's called champion.net.
Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Champion spells her name a little bit differently than you would normally. If you look up Champion in the dictionaries with the O, that O is replaced by an A. So
yeah. My parents thought they wanted to name their child, boy or girl, Champion, and I was a girl, and they thought the A made it a little bit more feminine.
Okay, I
But
like that.
it just confuses everybody, really. But that's the story.
But you can go to champion.net to purchase any of Champion Fulton's recordings, and make sure you do that, and do it very quickly. So, Lonnie, do we have any questions now in our last 10 minutes or so? Any questions available from the audience? I saw a few things pop up, but they disappeared from my screen before I can see them in full. So, Lonnie, anything that we can share?
Yes, Curtis. First question for Champion is, what brought Champion to gig with Scott Hamilton?
Well, I always liked Scott's music, and we hadn't met, but I got called by a presenter that I work with in Spain, and they were hooking up a tour, and they said, we'd like you to come and accompany Scott. And by the way, on the day of the first gig of the tour, we're going to make a live record. And I said, great. I was so excited. But it was like that. I flew over from New York to Spain. I got there the day before. It was down kind of near Valencia, so it's this beautiful town right on on the beach, on the Mediterranean. And then Scott arrived the next day, and we had lunch, and we just found that we were really, like already friends. Like I had been listening to Arnett Cobb that day.
Oh, yeah.
I said, oh, I'm listening to the Arnett Cobb record with Red Garland. And Scott, I love that record. And we
Yeah.
were talking, and we had a long lunch, and then, we realized that it was just going to be a lot of fun to play together, and very easy. We like the same tunes. We have a lot of sort of similar ideas about the music, and we became really good friends. Oddly enough, we also have the exact same birthday.
Really? Cool.
September 12th.
Okay. That is very cool. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question. Lonnie, do we have any other questions? I think I see one. I'll take this one on the screen. Just came up from Kevin Patterson. What current jazz vocalists do you admire?
I really like Roberta Gambarini.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Roberta in a while, but I used to see her here in New York performing all the time, of course, with Roy Hargrove, and I saw her even once with Roy Haynes. And I just love that record she made, the duo record with Hank Jones.
Yes.
Is so nice.
Yes.
I also always really loved Tierney Sutton's shows when she would come.
Okay.
Totally like different. I mean, different than me, but I really liked her band and her presentation and stuff. Those were fun shows. I think Tierney and Roberta.
I've never gotten a chance to see Tierney. I've seen Roberta. She's a friend. Seen her a few times, but yeah, those are two great vocalists to admire, though. So thank you for that. Do we have? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say Tierney would come to Birdland maybe twice a year. Back when I first moved to New York, and it was just always fun. They were exciting because she had a really tight band. It wasn't just, she didn't just stand out in front and sing.
Oh, very cool. Do we have any more, Lonnie?
Yes, I have another question. This is from Barbara Williams. She wants to know, do you develop your style as your talents grow and change?
Well, I think my style and my musical, my vision and my ideas about the music have been, I don't want to say they haven't changed, but I've had that sort of idea of what I wanted to do for a very long time. But, as you get older, especially as a singer, your voice matures and changes, and, I become more comfortable with what I'm doing, because for many years when I was playing and singing at the beginning, I really had to focus on one thing and not the other. And so one thing would become more routine, and one thing would become the creative side. And now, finally, after like more than 20 years, I feel more comfortable, and I'm able to be maybe creative in both, at the same time in both instruments. So I think that's been really the best thing for me about growing up or getting older.
No, getting better, not older, just better, right?
Maturing.
Yes, there you go. I like that. So I think Vince Luciani just had a question. Remember his, even though it's disappeared from the screen. Do you have well, of course, not now during quarantine, but outside of quarantine, do you have a regular standing gig in New York City?
You know, the past couple years, I used to, and I actually was playing Sundays at the Carlisle for a long time at Bimmelman's Bar, which is here on the East Side. And I used to play at, I don't know if people here have been to New York, but I used to play twice a month at the Garage, which was a super cool but funky place in the Village.
Yeah.
But I've been on the road so much the past couple years that it's been difficult to have anything with regularity here in New York. I would say the most regular thing is I play at Birdland twice a year, which has become sort of the regular in-town gig. But, you know, like just this year, I was going to be on the road the last 2 weeks of March, all of April, most of May. So I'm usually touring here in the States, Europe, Canada, things like that.
Okay. Another question I did see come up on the screen. I'm sorry, I can't remember who asked the question, so forgive me for forgetting that part, but I do remember the question essentially was, do you have any plans after quarantine to play a gig in Charlotte or in our area here?
I would love to. I would love to. I keep my website up to date. Now I'm putting my online streaming schedule on my website, since that's sort of what we're doing now. But I would love to come to Charlotte, and I'm coming to South Carolina in October, so maybe I'll be close.
That's good to know. Okay, we will definitely keep that in mind. Now, there was another question that came up that I did. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. That was my Google Assistant who just chimed in. Didn't have a question, just said it didn't understand me. Very creepy. But in any case, Lonnie, I did see another question that did go by. There were a couple more that I might have missed.
Right. The mom of a 16-year-old jazz pianist wanted to know if you have any advice for the piano player or for the mom.
That's good. Definitely the most important thing I think is to practice, keep practicing, and stay, dedicated to that. Listen to a lot of jazz records, play along with the jazz records, because really that's the way you have to learn jazz. Not so much through books, they're great books, and not so much through even lessons, but by playing it. And one of the best ways to do that is to play along with your favorite records, so that you can feel like you're in the band.
Okay.
And
yes.
Well, yeah, and to piggyback on that question, Champion, I did also want to ask, because there was another question. Do you have any advice for younger music students who are, in quarantine and lockdown right now? Would you have any practice tips or advice for young musicians right now?
I think the thing right now is that it can be such a hard time, and to not be necessarily too hard on yourself. I know I haven't been feeling so inspired every day to practice. Sort of, you want to keep practicing and stay involved with your music, but don't be too hard on yourself. Try to for me, I always found the thing that helped was to make plans, for the future. Plan what your next project's going to be, when you can do it, and just keep thinking about being staying a jazz musician. I was saying to Steven the other day, like, I haven't had a gig with my band since March 13th, and it's a long time for me. It's the longest I've ever gone in my whole life, and it sort of feels can feel disheartening. But I was saying nothing will stop me from being a jazz musician ever, not even COVID.
Wow. That is awesome. I think I saw Greg Jarrell, and we were going to wrap it up, but Greg had one, Lonnie, that did come across. I know he's a very fine tenor saxophonist. Yes.
He wants to know what efficient practice means. He said you mentioned that earlier.
Yes. So, it can be so easy to have unfocused practicing, which can feel fun, but it can largely be a waste of time. When I say efficient practicing, I mean actually working on something and staying focused on it repeatedly. You know, I remember I used to watch the Barry Harris Masterclass video. And Barry
Yeah.
talks about, you know, if you're learning something, maybe let's just say confirmation. You know, you're going to play birds to confirmation. That you need to sit down and play it and for an hour, you know, or you play the head 15 times in a row perfectly, or you know, and that's what I mean when I say efficient practice, focused practice, where you're getting better and not just playing, which can also be good. You should also sit down and play, but that's not always the same thing as efficient practice.
Okay, great advice. We'll get it wrapped up. I did see a last question that I can answer that came across from Richard Sandoval. He wanted to know what was the name of the Roberta that you admired, and that was Roberta Gambarini. So make sure you do know that, another fine vocalist. But we're not here, as good as Roberta is, we're not here to talk about Roberta tonight. We're here to talk about and talk with Champian Fulton. Champion, thank you so much for spending an hour with us, for gracing us with your song, with your piano playing, with your personality, and it truly has been a pleasure to spend this time with you. Once again, as Lonnie has just put up on the screen, her latest available album right now with Corey Weeds, a terrific album on Cellar Live. It's called Dream a Little. Corey Weeds and Champian Fulton. There's also The Stylings of Champion. Those are her two most recent albums. The Stylings of Champion is, I would say, it's about an album and a half, right? Because yes, it's one full CD, and then you had so much great stuff, Champion, you decided to release another one. Just a real quick last question. Why a CD and a half on that?
Well, so the Stylings is, I have it right here too. It was my 10th record. And it was with my band, my current band, Fuku and Hide and Steven. And we had a great year that year. We were just playing a lot, lots of gigs, lots of tours. And we had all these tunes that we wanted to record. And, you know, you go in the studio and you record more than you need, you know, so that you can make a record. But literally, this is it. It's the inside.
Yes. Everything
that we recorded, I thought was awesome. Well, here's another one. We had two different kinds made. There you can see the discs. It was just, and I don't know, we would listen to it in the car on the road, and I was like, what are we going to cut out? What are we going to cut out? I don't know. And then I thought, oh, well, you know.
What the heck?
Record. What the heck? Put it all out. And, and then we were like, well, maybe we should go back in the studio and flesh it out to two, you know, hour-long discs. But, you know, when we go in the studio, we just go in the studio one day, usually for about 6 hours. And I thought, I don't know, I wanted it to be what it was. That's what it was that day. I didn't want to, you know, and I thought, oh, people will like that it's like a record and a half. Some people have been like, why isn't it, you know, an extra 30 minutes? And I'm like, well, you know, you don't have to listen to the second disc. That's my guys right there. That's my band. It's such a cute picture.
It was a great picture.
We're all very short. So.
No, okay, well, it all worked out. But Champian Fulton, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Remember, champion.net is the best place to find out about her schedule, to find out about to buy the music that she's got available, and also to get any information you want about Live from Lockdown, which is coming up this and every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to turn things back over to Lonnie to wrap us up. Thank you all for joining us. My name, again, is Curtis Davenport. You can catch me now and always at my station, and that is Kurt Jazz Radio, the best jazz anywhere in the world, 24/7 on Live 365. So, Lonnie, and there it is for Kurt Jazz Radio. Champion, thank you. Lonnie, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Champion, for joining us this evening. And thank you, Curtis. And thanks to all of you for listening. And we will be back again next week with more conversations with Curtis. And I do want to thank our donors and our supporters for supporting Jazz Arts. Thank you, guys. And want to remind everyone that Jazz Arts is a nonprofit organization, and our focus is to protect the community and developing a jazz audience through education, performance, and musician support. And if you do have the means, please please consider a gift to Jazz Arts Charlotte today. And our website is thejazzarts.org. Again, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.